Alrighty folks, thanks for tuning in. If you saw my last video, you saw that I picked up this 2013 Ford Focus Electric, and it has a coolant leak issue inside of the lower battery pack. There's actually two different battery packs on these cars that are linked together, and in this case we have a problem with the lower battery. So what we're going to do in this video is we're going to pull the lower battery pack out and get started on moving forward with that repair. I've kind of skipped ahead a little bit. I actually pulled the lower cover and sort of this skid plate subframe piece off of the bottom of the car. So I won't cover that in the video, but it's simple to take off. It's only about a half a dozen bolts that hold that thing in. So next we'll go ahead and remove all of the high voltage disconnects to make the car safe, and we'll start working on removing the pack. Alrighty, so the first step when doing any kind of work on the high voltage system on any electric car is, of course, to disconnect the high voltage system. But first, we need to disconnect our 12-volt battery. So we're going to go ahead and do that real quick. You actually really only need to disconnect the negative terminal. Socket's too tall there, so we get a short one. Boom. Alright, so we got that disconnected. And now we'll remove the high voltage disconnects as well. This car has two of them, by the way. Alright, so the first of the two high voltage disconnects is behind the back seat here. Go ahead and pull our headrest off. We've got this little cover there. And then we've got our square disconnect there. So this is kind of a two-stage release mechanism. There's a black tab that we press down on here, pulls the lever out, and then we press the tab again to pull it the rest of the way out. This is actually the same style disconnect that's used on the Fiat 500e and the Toyota RAV4 EV. So anyway, I always stick these up on the dash so that we know, or anybody else knows, that the car is disconnected and safe to work on. So there's that one done. We'll go grab the other one here next. Alright, so our second disconnect is right here behind the passenger side rear tire. And as you can see, it's a little bit dirty from road grime and stuff. Seems like a pretty strange placement to me, but apparently that's what the engineers decided to do. So same exact style disconnect, two-stage. So we'll do the same thing. Might have a little bit of dirt jammed in here holding us up. There we go, there's our first click. Terrible design there. All of the parts that are supposed to move just get caked in with dirt. Sorry, can't see that. So this little clip here has to be pushed down in order for our black wraparound tab here to come off. It had so much dirt under it that I couldn't actually push it down all the way to get it to come loose. So had to kind of finagle with it, hit it with some electrical cleaner. I'll have to clean this thing up before it gets reinstalled, but we've got it off. Alright, we've got our two coolant lines here and here. There's also a separate set of cooling lines that go on the other side, and they go to the upper pack that's in the trunk. But all we care about for now are these two. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to clamp off the rubber part of the lines to try and keep the coolant from flowing out on the vehicle side, because we want to try and make it as easy for ourselves as possible when we go to purge the air out of the system. So we'll clamp those off, and then we'll drain as much coolant as we can out of the battery itself. Alright, I had to reposition a little bit there to get my transmission jack underneath with a just a reservoir to catch the coolant. You don't make a giant mess. These connections are a little bit tricky. Kind of have to push in on it, and then there's a couple little tabs to squeeze to unlock it off of the nipple where it comes out of the battery. There we go. All right, that's both disconnected. Those are a little bit tricky to get out. The nipples themselves are just plastic. So you want to be real careful that you don't break the little clips on them or anything, taking them apart. So we'll just go ahead and let that drain for a minute, and then we'll start disconnecting everything else. All right, our coolant is mostly drained. I'm actually going to stick a couple of these little rubber plugs just so it's not dripping on us while we're trying to remove the battery. Now we can disconnect our connectors here. So we actually have 3 connectors right here. There's 2 up above that have some tabs in them that pull out. Let me get a little hook tool for that. There we go. Actually, pull the lower one off first because that'll make the access to the other ones easier. So it has just a tab here that's supposed to pull back. Again, with all the dirt built up under here, it might be easier said than done to get that out. Let me try another tool here real quick. There we go. And that lever pops out like so. Then we just pull on the connector. And of course, you've got other stuff in the way here. Now I'll have to close the lever again, just like we had to do on the other side with the disconnect. Which again is easier said than done. And we just broke our connector. Awesome. Gotta love brittle 10-year-old plastic. Well, we'll have to order a new arm for that. There we go. So that's off of there. And that's actually, you can see it's just one cable on that one blade. The other one is kind of in the center. So, but yeah, we busted our lever off, so we'll have to order a new lever. The rest of the connector's fine, but These levers are replaceable. And then these come out up here as well. You've got to pull the white tab out, which came out pretty easy actually. And these are kind of a weird two-stage. So the first, or I guess you could call it a three-stage. The first stage is pulling out that white tab. And then you push on the orange tab here and pull the connector out part way. Again, easier said than done when the stuff is jammed with dirt. Just a touch of leverage on there. There we go. So now it's off part way, and now we need sort of a narrow, either a screwdriver or a pick, to sort of press down the opposite direction to get it to pop off the rest of the way. So you stick it in, you can't see the one that I'm working on there, but there's sort of this little channel here. What you do is you stick this in between and you pry that other piece open to get it to unclip. So it's a little bit delicate. And again, we're working with 10-year-old plastic stuff here, so they could be a little brittle. There we go. So that one popped off, no problem. We'll repeat the same on the other side. There we go. So there's the first half. And we'll get our pick in here. Try on that little tab. There we go. So that's all three of those disconnected. And I'll actually pull, there's a couple little clips holding the harness onto the car there that I'll undo. Okay. So that's mostly fine for now. Scoot that out of the way. On to the next. So this one's the same style connector as that larger one on the side that we just disconnected. But as you can see, it's squeaky clean because there used to be a cover on here that we removed already. Why they didn't have covers for the sides as well, who knows? But the blue tab should just pop back, just like so. And then this lever here kind of pops loose. Sort of a tab that retains it. And then we just pivot it down. There we go. We didn't break that one. It's actually a slightly... Is it slightly different than the other one? No, that's the same connector. So we got that one off now. And we have a couple data connectors over here as well. So we'll just scooch you over. Excuse my poor camera placement skills. So now we're going for this connector right here. And that's actually just got a, looks like a 10mm bolt that holds it in, and then that connector should more or less just kind of pull out. There we go. So there's that connector unplugged. It's going to be basically our data connector. And that's pretty much it. I think we've just got a couple of ground straps, and then we should be pretty much good to drop the battery out. Alrighty, there we go. Battery's out of the car. Pretty small, actually. Well, let's see if we can get started on opening this thing up. Got a bunch of these little supporting structures on the side. So we have one over here, we've got one on the front, and one on the other side as well. So all three of those are going to have to come off. go. Battery is exposed. I'll probably take this front piece off, and maybe the same on the back side as well, so we can kind of get the stuff a little bit easier. Let's see what we can see inside. Alright, so if we take a peek in here, if I can get my light to work and focus, I don't see anywhere where the tubes look like they're necessarily separating, but I can definitely see some evidence of coolant in here. It's a little bit hard to get the camera to focus down in the battery here. But anyway, you can kind of see some of the condensation built up on the back side of the connector here. And different places in here looking down, you can definitely see evidence of moisture in the bottom. Same over here on the other side. See a little bit of a puddle of coolant down there. So anyway, we'll get the sides of this taken off so that we can see a little bit better. Not sure if I'll be able to take this side off with the cooling tubes, at least not very easily, but I'll at least get the front and the back taken off so that we can see those. Alright, so we've got the side covers off. These 3 sides actually are all just one big piece, and then this side is its own separate piece. But anyways, we can kind of see the coolant in here a little bit better. And if you look at these 2 kind of splices between each of these modules, each have their own little separate coolant manifold to the plates. And you can see that the cell expansion has caused these 2 splices to actually split apart. So that's definitely one of the sources for the coolant leaks. I don't really see anything else on this side that appears to be a problem area. And then if we go to the other side, you can see we have another one that's split. Just that upper one, the lower one is still holding together. It doesn't look like it was starting to leak yet though. That's not a drop, that's just a little plastic nub on there. But this fitting down here, I don't know how well you can see that, but this inlet fitting on the end, it also looks like was leaking. So anyway, when I get this stuff pulled apart, I'll probably check that fitting out and see if maybe the O-ring in it looked pinched or something. And then I guess we'll see if maybe we can compress the modules together a little bit to get this stuff to fit back together the way that it's supposed to. You can kind of see these plates on the end are sort of bowed out on the sides. So if we can add some sort of a clamping mechanism, sort of, I don't know, maybe right in between the cooling tubes, although that's closer to the bottom of the module. This one's like right in the center of the module, height-wise. You can see this one's towards the bottom and this one's pretty much right in the middle. So I don't know, maybe we can have a clamp here and then another above it. We'll have to see what we can actually make fit in here. If we can add a bit more help compression-wise to this thing to keep it all together. So anyway, that'll kind of be the plan. It's getting towards the end of the day here, and I actually have a new customer car showing up probably sometime later tonight. So I probably am going to put this on the back burner for at least a few days until I can get to it again. But when we do, we'll start taking the rest of the pack apart and start cleaning everything up. Alrighty, you join me here on the weekend. It's a few days later since we pulled the pack out of the car. I've actually kind of done a couple things behind the scenes, including doing a little bit of measuring and some research. I think I have a plan on how to fix the coolant leak issue without eliminating the cooling system. So should have parts showing up on Monday or Tuesday, I believe, and we'll start doing that stuff. But we'll save that for later. For now, we've got to get the pack apart and clean out all of the coolant that's leaked in here, because any coolant that's in here has the potential to cause isolation failures, like we already have, and corrosion, which is kind of the worst case scenario. We don't want any corrosion. I also went by a wrecking yard this morning that happened to have one of these in their yard, and I picked up a replacement for that locking lever that we broke when we were pulling the pack out. So grabbed one of those. Don't break these. I discovered they're basically unobtainium. The actual connector was originally made by Delphi, which is now, they were bought out or absorbed by another company called Aptiv. And these connectors must be discontinued. I couldn't even find them in any online catalogs. Couldn't find them on Mauser, DigiKey, any of the normal electronics sourcing places. So anyway, that is going to have to be something to keep in mind. If you pull one of these out, do not break your connector. Be very careful. I got lucky that they happen to have one of these still on that car in the wrecking yard. The other one was broken, the same one that I encountered that's behind that wheel that gets coated in dirt, but the one underneath in the middle was still mostly intact. It does have just a slight little break in it there, but overall it's plenty usable. So now we'll kind of get into disassembling the pack here and start drying stuff out. All right, we're going to start removing some of the hardware here for the high voltage stuff. So I'm actually going to start with this bank of modules first. This will be the easiest one to get out, and a lot of these wiring harnesses and bus bars and everything are actually attached to the front side of that group of modules. So once we get these out, it'll be easier to disconnect all of that stuff. There are a couple of harnesses that have to be unplugged from each of these modules, but I think if I start pulling them out, I can get in there and unplug each one. I discovered when I was experimenting, these coolant manifolds are actually a little bit, they're not super difficult to remove, but they are a little tricky. But the first thing to do is to pull all the clips off. I'll just set those up there. And then these are just kind of friction fit onto the tubes in place. So I found the easiest method to get it apart is to just pry it. I don't really have anything narrow enough to go in between there other than a big screwdriver, so
but that seems to work. You just kind of gently pry it out a bit. And I'll just kind of do it one section at a time. So you can see that's one manifold off. And all these these are kind of like some kind of silicone tube, and they're just friction fit onto these little tubes that stick out of the heat exchanger plate that's in between all the cells. So we'll just go through and take all those off one at a time, just like that one. All right, so we're gonna pull these compression straps off of here, or whatever you want to call them. Hopefully it doesn't go springing on us too much. It's definitely got a wee bit of tension on it. Yeah, those have definitely got some tension on them for sure. We'll take this side plate off. That might be easier said than done. All right, I think we're going to try and just leave that in place for now and see if we can sort of squeeze one of the modules out, because I don't want to bend, particularly the bottom plate here, trying to pry up against that, and it is in there pretty tight. Okay, well, I just realized that I didn't record removing the first module here, so that's a bummer. I will tell you that it was much harder than I thought. As soon as I had the compression straps off, I mean, this thing is under a lot of pressure. You can actually see some of these modules here, these plastic cell separators are literally popping apart from the amount of cell expansion. So getting this back together is probably going to be really tricky. But I did get the 5th module out. Originally I was trying to get the 6th module, but it was kind of jammed in here up against this plate and against those threaded studs, and I didn't want to risk tearing it up, particularly on the studs there. So I ended up pulling this one out instead, because it was adjacent, and we kind of have smooth sides for it to slide in and out against. So anyway, there's module 5. So we'll get back to removing the rest of these, and then it should be good to go, at least on this side of the pack. Alrighty, so we've got the first bank of modules out, and you can see just how much coolant was in the bottom. That's why it's critical to get all this stuff out of here so that it can be cleaned up. And then of course we have the modules themselves, and you can see just how much the cell expansion is causing these things to kind of split apart. It even tore that sticker in half on that one. So hopefully we'll be able to compress these just enough to get it back in without too much of a problem. That might be the biggest challenge, is actually getting the modules back in. So now we have access to everything on this side. You can see all of these harnesses are all kind of attached to this bank of modules with these little clips here. So we've got all those. We'll remove the bus bars that go to the contactors, or rather, well, yeah, they go from the 2 blocks of modules here to the contactors, and then on the output side of the contactors, they would normally get split. So one comes along this side and ends up at the connector here. And then the other one goes basically straight down to the center area here. And then that would go to that connector that was sort of in the tunnel in the middle of the car. Actually, there you go. There's the other cable end on it. So we'll get started on tearing the rest of that stuff apart, and then we can start cleaning everything up. So to pry these modules out, I took my big long screwdriver and I actually just put some electrical tape on the end of it to insulate it. And technically we're just on the plastic housing here, but I want to be safe. I'm going to very, very carefully try to get under, probably starting on the end where I can get a little bit of a bite. I can get it up just enough that I can start to get under the modules in the middle. Get this out of my way. Once again, I'm going for one of the ones in the middle because I'll be able to slide it out pretty easily. We're stuck on the plates on either end, and I don't think I can get the plate off. And then I also have a risk of the studs on the end kind of running into the cells on that side. So I don't want to do that. So I'm going to try and slide out one of the ones in the middle. And that'll give me enough of a purchase to get things going here. We might actually be able to get this end module out easier this time because it seems like it's got a bit... Oh yeah, there we go. There we go. So there's one module out. Now the rest will be easy. Alrighty, all the modules are out. You can see all this coolant in here. Of course, this isn't even including what I already drained out when I pulled the rubber plugs. We've got all the modules here. Couldn't quite fit them all in a row, but almost. And you can see just how much some of them have sort of fanned out. It doesn't seem to pick up quite as well on camera, but like looking at some of these, you can tell how much narrower they are at that end. This is where all the cells are connected together, and then it fans out on this end, and you can see where the plastic housings have kind of popped loose. So I'll definitely have to try and compress them at least a little bit to get them back into shape so that they'll fit back into the case. But the next step will just be cleaning everything up. It's pretty much the end of the day here now though, so I'll catch you tomorrow or whatever other day I end up working on this again. So we'll see you then. Coming at you from the desk here. As you can see, this is a pretty long video process, so we're splitting this up into a couple different parts. I'm not totally sure if it's going to be 2 or 3, but it's definitely going to be at least 2 parts. So if you made it to the end of this one, stay tuned for part 2 of the battery rebuilding process. We've got some interesting developments coming on part 2, so definitely stay tuned for that. I'll try and get it out next week, and hopefully we'll have another update for you then. But as always, thanks for watching, and stay tuned for the next one.